Ilian didn't even have time to get angry at the servant for entering without knocking. With a dumbfounded expression, he simply stared at the servant. "What did you say?" The servant, who had burst into his master's bedroom as pale as a sheet, trembled. It was one thing for the second prince and an unknown man to be here, but what was even more shocking was the master's condition. Ilian sat collapsed on the ground, eyes wild. And his mouth was full of paper. It looked as if someone had shoved it in there forcefully. But who would dare do that to the head of the Corney family? Certainly not. The servant glanced nervously at the second prince. Well aware of what suspicions it might arouse, the prince remained calm and unmoved. "Yes, sir." The servant stammered, unable to understand the situation. But before he could ask what was going on, Ilian grabbed him first. "What did you just say?" "Sorry?" "What did you just say?" Ilian's bloodshot eyes locked onto him. The servant came to his senses and quickly delivered the report. There was a landslide in Dafa. Fortunately, since it happened before we began full-scale mining of the mana stone, there were no major losses. But only one person, Baron Caleb Ambrose, was buried under the rubble. "Who is this?" "Older brother of Her Highness, wife of the second prince." At the servant's explanation, Ilian trembled. Franz calmly listened to the report, his face expressionless even upon hearing the news of his brother-in-law's death. "Is he made of stone?" Ilian glanced at the second prince and felt even more puzzled. There was no solace to be found even in human decency. Everything was getting worse. "Sir, and there's more." "What now?" "All the equipment stored inside is now unrecoverable. We can't proceed with mana stone mining either." "What?" Desperately trying to calm his master, the servant quickly added, "At least there were no mass casualties. If the workers had died, it could have been worse." "You idiot. What do you know? The equipment over there is worth several times the value of the workers. It would have been better if the workers had died instead." "Sorry?" The servant looked at him, astonished. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. Is equipment more important than people? Would it be better if the workers died? Damn. Damn everything. That was my last source of income. Ilian cursed angrily, slamming his hands on the ground. The behavior was completely unbecoming of the nobleman he usually portrayed. The servant stood frozen in place. "The Imperial Inspection Office will soon conduct a search and seizure of the Corney family. Cooperate with the investigation." "Excuse me?" "And yes, Your Highness." At the prince's cold command, the servant bowed deeply. The Imperial Inspection Office. Now he could see where things were headed. Ilian Corney's accumulated wealth was about to collapse like a sandcastle. This is the end for the Corney family. The servant withdrew with a bitter heart. For generations, the chiefs had served the Corney family. But this current president was particularly greedy. Not only the master, but his daughter as well. When greed goes too far, the ending is rarely good. Now that the imperial family was involved, it would not end in simple ruin. Ilian will go crazy. Maybe he's already gone crazy. I'd better start thinking about my survival. The servant clicked his tongue and walked into the hall. One last piece of information lingered in his mind, a fact he didn't dare tell his master. Dafa had no mana stones at all. Only a small amount of low-quality coal came out of there. But he didn't have the courage to say it. If Ilian found out that Dafa wasn't even a mana stone mine, he might kill him on the spot. But the servant's little mercy was in vain. One way or another, Ilian will have a miserable end. Crichton stood in the second prince's drawing room, casting sharp glances around him. He was holding back the urge to scream at the top of his lungs. Glenna had been deceived by the princess's second wife. That was ridiculous. All it took was a necklace offered as collateral, and Glenna gave her a written guarantee of personal safety. Complete safety, secured by just a pendant. An excessive pledge in exchange for a simple guarantee. Worse still, Glenna didn't even get the necklace. Totally funny. And that was not all. It seemed that the second prince's wife had even used the Ilian mana stone as evidence for the document. Ilian's heart was offered as collateral. Upon hearing the full story, Crichton was disappointed in Glenna for the first time. That was part of what had attracted him to her. It is better to be frank about one's desires than to pretend to be humble and virtuous. But today, her greed displeased him. Both the necklace that blinded her judgment, and the second prince's wife who played with it, made him angry. Even the Empress felt like a traitor. If the Empress had given the necklace to Glenna in the first place, none of this would have happened. But instead, the Empress handed him over to the wife of the second prince. She couldn't have known that Glenna coveted her. Glenna had always imagined it adorning her neck once she became the crown prince's wife. But suddenly, things ended with her second wife, the princess. It was the moment Glenna acquired a fatal weakness, the only weakness that could cloud her judgment. The second prince's wife took advantage of this skillfully. No. I abused him. Crichton gritted his teeth, staring at the door. He had come looking for the second prince's wife some time ago, but she had not shown up yet. A maid said she was taking a shower. All he could do was wait endlessly. It was impolite to appear unannounced, so he had no choice but to wait. However, the longer he waited, the angrier he became. How dare you make me wait? More than an hour passed. Enough time to finish showering. However, the door remained tightly closed. Crichton tapped his foot anxiously on the carpet. He clicked his tongue in annoyance and pulled the bell rope. As if she had been waiting for this, a maid appeared at the door. Yes, Your Highness? Is she still not ready? She is currently getting her hair done. Please, wait a moment. Styling? Crichton's perfectly arched eyebrows furrowed. Struggling to hold back a scream, he spoke through clenched teeth. We are a family. There is no need for all that. Just tell her to get out. But, I said, tell her to get out immediately. Startled by his loud voice, the maid bowed deeply. Her Highness is still drying her hair. I apologize. Crichton frowned. He shouted loud enough for the second prince's wife to hear him. If she had any sense of hierarchy, she would hurry up and get out. He waved his hand impatiently, muttering, Forget it. Just bring me more tea. I'm thirsty. Yes, Your Highness. The maid bowed again and left. Before long, a new tea set was brought. Crichton watched the maid pour the tea with sharp eyes. The second prince's wife was not the only one who played the pipe. It was said that her personal maid was also involved. Is this girl? His gaze narrowed. She had dark hair too. Remember the maid who visited Glenna with Caleb before? He couldn't remember the face, but her dark black hair stood out clearly in his memory. But, it doesn't matter. Crichton smiled sarcastically at the black-haired maid. Teaching her a lesson first wouldn't be a bad way to send a message to the second prince's wife. The palace maids were indistinguishable from the weeds in the king's garden. They were kept on only for convenience. If Emir wanted to run them over, he could. Well, this could be fun. With an evil smile, Crichton raised the teacup and spoke smoothly. You've had a hard time, haven't you? I am only performing my duties, Your Highness. Her Highness will be leaving soon. Please, wait a moment. What is your name? The maid slowly raised her bowed head. Her light green eyes stared straight at him. Crichton's eyebrows twitched. How dare you look at a prince directly in the eyes? Unbelievable rudeness. Clearly, she was taking from her master. Was it her that day? As he searched his memory, the maid lowered her gaze again. I am Isolde, huh? The name rolled softly off his tongue, and the maid trembled slightly at the sound. Fixing his gaze on her black hair, Crichton continued. Where is that girl, Sarah? Sarah is not in the palace now. Why? Palace maids are not allowed to leave on a whim. There are family matters. Or maybe, you're the little thief? Pointing at her with the hand holding the teacup, a bright white light began to glow from his finger. No. I'm not. Then bring me Sarah. She's not in the palace. Facing Mana, the maid's face turned pale. Even so, she continued to defend Sarah. Definitely involved. Crichton increased the power of his mana, squinting as if he was going to burn a hole through her. It seems you've grown attached to your little friend. Come on. I'll send you to her soon. At the moment he was about to obliterate the maid with light mana, what do you think you're doing? The door opened. The wife of the second prince entered the reception room, resplendent in her clothes and styling.